Hi, everyone. This is Insecurities, and I'm really excited to be here with you today.
And this is Raphael, and welcome back to episode number 8 in Relationships Done Different. Today's subject is if you really knew who I am, you would never love me.
I love that title because it is one of the core issues that we as human beings have. Deep in our core, we are hiding. We pretend that we are a certain way because if we present ourselves in a way that seems acceptable to the world, which, by the way, is gathered from what society says is good, bad, right, or wrong, and we feel like we don't live up to that, we mold ourselves, we shift ourselves to do our very best to fit the mold that isn't really true. And that means that we all have things that society thinks are not okay. Every one of us, whether you like to admit it or not, everybody has or does lie, cheat, has jealousies, has insecurities, has a sense of betrayal done to them and has provided that to other people. They have judgments. We have so many little things going on that is incorporated into the human condition, and we all like to pretend that none of that is true. And we pretend that none of that is true because we feel that if you knew that we actually did any of those things, certainly you would not love me, because we live in a world that says you're not supposed to be those things. Well, I have a news bulletin for you. It's a lie, because people are not going to love you if you have ever told a lie or if you've ever had a judgment. Get real. There isn't anybody who hasn't done both of those things, just as a sample. Now, perhaps, and perhaps some people will say ideally, although that's a judgment in and of itself, it's about, well, I don't lie anymore or whatever. But I'm telling you, you probably still do. Maybe not in the same way that you used to. You may have become much more crafty about it. And the fact that you may try to say to yourself that you don't judge, really, get a grip. There isn't one person on the planet that doesn't go through the day in a continuous state of judgment. And do you realize that a judgment doesn't necessarily have to be something quote unquote negative, but it means that basically you have an opinion. A judgment can be quote unquote good and it can be quote unquote bad, depending upon your belief systems and the degree of good, bad, right, and wrong you live. So I want you to really start to think about this for a minute. The self-judgment that we have is crippling. It creates a tremendously low self-esteem. It keeps us small. It keeps us from doing, being, feeling, thinking, saying everything that's really within us, which is really who we are. And the truth is that it's not being who you are that's causing the rift or the separation. And that separation is coming between you and you, not between you and them. You make the decision about how you want to present yourself in the world. And believe me, I do understand that it's scary because our world is based on us all being sheeple. Following the herd, following the flock around, doing what everybody else does. That's why people who step out of the flock are having a difficult time with their own sense of being loved and lovable, if you will. Are we on the same page over here?
We are, definitely. It's so it's so deep. I just can't imagine. I know why, and I'd like to go into that so people could really get an understanding of why we're like that. And it affects just everything that we do. Everything.
It affects truly everything we do. And the reason that it does is because we grow up believing certain things. Certain things that we feel that we must do to be accepted and to be loved. One of the other core issues inside of human beings is that we want to know that we're loved and lovable, because on a very deep level, we do not feel loved and lovable. That's why people excel so much. That's why people do these amazing things, because they'll be recognized, and in that recognition, that's equated as love. I mean, we could go a lot of places with this whole subject, but the bottom line is that as we grow up, we are molded into, for the most part, according to whomever it is that is taking care of us. You would be surprised how much of your life is gauged by or molded by your nanny, so to speak, your babysitter, the school that you go to during the day, the people that are also your parents, or maybe it's your grandparents that are influencing you the most. It really doesn't matter with whom it is that you are spending your time with. What's important to recognize about that is that you are going to be taught according to how they think, according to how they feel, according to their own personal values, according to their own perception about society and the way the world works and the way the world, quote unquote, ought to work. So that means that if you stop and think about who really brought you up and you spent most of your life with for the first 12 or 14 years in particular, you're going to have a better understanding when you observe them now from an adult place, how you think, some of the things that you think, how you feel about certain things that you feel. And based on that, what occurs is our lives are then orchestrated from these beliefs that we acquired from whomever it was.
And we're not even aware of. We don't even know it.
Exactly. We just don't have a clue about these things, because the majority of people are not awake and aware about their upbringing. They perhaps you're one of those people that has never even heard of what it is that I'm speaking about right now. And if you have, maybe you've never sat down and thought about, this person raised me most of the time, and how much am I like them? How many of my belief systems have come from their belief systems? I can tell you myself personally. My father was in the Second World War. My mother was one of those wives that, like a army wife or whatever in the Depression. So the bottom line is they grew up with not having very much at all. Things were very tight, very difficult, and they were Catholics, so they didn't use birth control, so we had a whole bunch of kids, and we didn't have enough money to really live the way that we would have ideally lived. And what do you think happened to me, deeply ingrained inside of me? There's never enough. There's a deep scarcity. Now, everybody has these in varying different degrees. It depends on usually your upbringing. So mine was, okay, we live in a depression. So guess what? Not only have I dealt with depression, I've lived in a mindset of economic depression. And you know how that's manifested for me, which I can observe now and I can chuckle at, because to me, it's no big deal. It's just part of the way I live. It's not the way I live so much anymore, but I can observe the way that I have been. It's what I call my script of how I'm playing out my part in my life. And when I look at this, what I see is that because I didn't have a lot, I want a lot. Not only do I want a lot, but I like to have a lot of things around me. I'm not a hoarder. Don't you say a thing. I truly am not a hoarder. But I do like to have excess of things. I like to have extra of everything. Extra pens, extra paper, extra makeup, extra clothes, extra shoes, extra everything. I mean, I am never going to pass the minimalist kind of criteria. And because of that, I can observe that characteristic of myself and I can go, wow, that is like so fascinating. And and when I really come to that place, what I realize is that's awesome. And so if we take the title of this episode, if you know who I am, you would never love me. Once you reach a certain place, and we'll talk more about this, then you start to realize that, golly, this is who I am. I grew up in this way, and this is deeply ingrained inside of me, and I've changed some of it, but it's kind of cool because I still do like having a lot of things around me. You know what? Makes me feel more secure. This personality piece that shows up sometimes feels more secure with that. And that's another very deep core issue that people have. Safety, 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 safety. Raphael, wouldn't you agree that your big thing is safety? Yours comes out a little bit different. How's yours work?
My safety is a big thing for me. I also, my parents, my grandfather came to the United States with just the clothes on his back, and my grandmother was pregnant. It was just, it's not only, what I really wanted to say here was that it's not only just that our caregivers and the people who took care of us, even our parents, it's not even the way they were. They picked that up from their from their caregivers, from their parents, and it goes on and on. So pretty much this is a societal thing that we've accumulated. And because now, as a baby boomer, my parents were very much in the Depression. They grew up in the Depression. Isatis's parents had that. And that is ingrained in us. That piece that there's something wrong. Why don't we have it? Why don't we have something? Is very, very prevalent, and we have no awareness of it. And the thing that's most significant for me is if one acknowledges that your whole being, your whole aspect of loving yourself, or conversely thinking there's something wrong with you, can happen in one moment from someone, your parent or whatever, saying one thing to you that will stay with you for the rest of your life. For me, it was, I was in college. I got a 4.0 one semester, all A's. The next semester, I got a 3.75, which meant that I got a B. And the only reaction from my parents, to whom I was looking for recognition, was, how come you got a B? And that has stayed with me for my whole life.
And you know what, that's very powerful for you to share that, because one of the things, and we're being very vulnerable and open today, obviously, because of what I'm about to say.
Uh-oh.
He has a thing running that he never does it good enough. He's not good enough, and he never does it good enough. No matter how awesome his projects are or the things that he does are, he always seems to come back. I won't say always, but most of the time. And it's like, see, I didn't do it good enough. And that's how deeply embedded, how deep the scar of just one statement can make in our entire lives. It's so amazing, so powerful.
And then bringing this back to relationships, if we have that number running that we're not good enough, there's something wrong with us, any of those things, that is what we are going to bring to our relationship. And as Isatis talked about, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, that's what you're going to attract into your life.
It's so very true. Please remember that the things that we talk about here are very deep, core information packets or something about life that most people do not speak about. They don't really go into this stuff in the same way. And some people, they really find great freedom once they better understand themselves and the way life works. And when you understand that your life was absolutely perfect, absolutely as it was meant to be, because this thing called life is an adventure. We get to live from experience to experience to experience to experience. It wasn't meant to beat us up. It wasn't meant to have us be in agony all of the time. Those are optional. And when I say they're optional, I really mean it. We don't have to see things, feel things, and experience things from a painful place once we really understand what's going on. Once, especially when we know where all of this came from, and we recognize also that it was a choice that we made, although it was unconscious, we now have the ability to make a different choice consciously. And that's extremely empowering. So when we walk around saying, if you knew who I am, you'd never love me, that's because you think, I have talked to so many people that think this, well, their life is really good. You know, they appear to have like the most awesome relationship. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they're always smiling and always laughing. Or you'll hear someone say, oh, where did they get all that money? How come they got so lucky that they've got everything handled that way? Or their kids are really perfect. Mine are, oh my God, if they're not in jail by the time they're 17, it's going to be a miracle. But they're thinking that their home is absolutely perfect. Let me tell you, you have no clue what's behind those closed doors. You have no clue. I have coached so many people that appear to have not only their act, but their family, their money, their health, their whatever, completely together, so perfect that it would be nauseating to some. And yet when you get under the covers, if you will, behind the scenes, you see these people are in agony. They have just as many things going on as the next person. So when you say to yourself, if you know who I am, you would never love me, get real. You are as lovable as the next person. And when you start to realize that you are not any better, nor are you any worse than anyone else, you'll realize that underneath that judgment, underneath that belief system that you have to be a certain way, is this incredibly deep core, amazing being. Some people call it a light, some people call it God, some people call it love, some people call it whatever it is that you want to call it. But the bottom line is, within you is a consciousness of true, the true essence of life. And that true essence of life is what it is that allows you to be perfect exactly as you are, even though you may think you are not that, because you have human characteristics, things that happen here in this third plane reality, the place where we have, as I spoke last time, the polarity system where you have up, down, right, wrong, good, bad, and all of that stuff, which is, listen close, it's a belief system.
It's what?
It's a belief system. It's a belief system. Everything is a belief system. So what's really powerful and core about that? It's that you have a belief system and you have the power to change your belief system. You have the power to think about what's awesome about you in every given moment, instead of going, oh, what was me? If you really knew, I need to hide, because if you see that I yelled at my dog, or I smacked my kid, or, whatever, you're going to be in confession, for the rest of your life, or beat yourself up, or self-flagellate, or wherever it is that you think you need to go to make sure you're punished because you're such a bad person. And you know what else? When you think that, what occurs is that you are putting out that energy. Remember in other episodes when we talked about how you put out an energy of what you're feeling, thinking, and experiencing internally. Internally. How you feel internally is what you are putting out into the world. It's an unseen force, and it's an energy that has a magnetic attraction factor to it. So guess what? If you are with yourself, with recognition, and you can start to see that you're putting stuff out, then what you're going to notice is that you are now pulling in people that are maybe not so nice to you. Maybe create self-doubt in you. Maybe create a sense of, I'm not enough. because they seem to have their act together, at least through your illusionary eyes. And so you compare yourself and you go, God, as I said a few moments ago, they've got it together. I'm a worm of the dust. And I couldn't dare let them know that I wasn't able to pay my bills this month. I can't dare to let them know that I lied to my partner. I can't dare to let them know that I gave my child up for adoption. I can't dare to let them know I got an abortion. Whatever it is that your little secrets, and you notice there's an S on the end of that word, secrets are, if you really know my secrets, you won't love me. But I have done a lot of deep work with people in retreats. And when people get safe enough and they start sharing what it is that's going on with them, it is phenomenal to notice that virtually everybody has one quote unquote secret that they thought was certainly worse than somebody else's until they heard somebody else's. And then they heard somebody else's, and then they heard somebody else's. And guess what? We're people. We're human beings. And what we are is ultimately, you've heard it before, spiritual beings in a human body. Who you are cannot be altered, changed, eradicated. There's nothing that can happen to you. So what does that mean? It means that you're playing something called the game called life. You have put on this shroud of illusionary belief systems about who you are. And from there, you get to decide whether you want to be happy, sad, mad, or glad. It's the power in you. Are you utilizing that power in a way that uplifts you or brings you down?
That is like so powerful. And I wanted to ask you, you just got finished saying that these are the things that you need to understand. Everybody does it. It wasn't your fault. Your parents did it. You learned from this one. You learned from that one. It's those life experiences. I don't know if you mentioned it's your script, but you've often talked about it being your script, kind of like where you're or how you're living your life out. And my question is, how do we, when it's so deeply core, when that self-deprecation is so core, what's the one thing you could recommend that will help us go in there and roto-rooter it out, help us bring it to the surface and let go of it? Because it's one thing to have an awareness, and that obviously is the starting point. But we need, in certain cases, and I'm speaking for myself now, when these things are so core, we really need a way to get deeper and deeper. So what is the one thing that you would suggest for people who are listening here?
If you have the awareness, then the next thing that's very critical is that you must have the desire to do what it takes to clear out the illusionary belief systems, the riffraff, the recycled ignorance, and do whatever it takes until it's clear. For some people, it's quite quick. For other people, not so quick. Depends on what kind of support you have, what kind of people you hang around with, how many people are there allowing you to be who you are without criticism. It depends on a lot of different things, but it has to start with getting connected with people that see things from a different viewpoint than one of the glass half empty or the one of continuous criticism. And that's very, very important to recognize. When you have the awareness and then you throw in the desire to do whatever it takes, you follow through with the commitment. I have a program called the Wealth Grid, and it may also be in the Mindset Breakthrough System program as well. But in there are 9 or 10 very powerful tools that are mandatory to create massive change. And sometime we could perhaps do a show on those, but I can tell you that awareness and desire and commitment and follow through, those are some of them. But the bottom line is, it has to be something that you really want. Some people seemingly don't have the energy, the desire. They are in such a place that unbeknownst perhaps to their conscious mind, they are okay and in fact comfortable in their pain, if you will, because we become addicted to about anything and everything. So we can become very addicted to pain. We can become very addicted to pleasure. We can become very addicted to sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever it is, because by nature, the human consciousness is looking for something to take them away from what's really bothering them in a deeper way. And therefore, when you become addicted to something, that's where all your focus goes. So if you're going to be addictive, because most everyone is in one way or another, what if you got addicted to really learning how to love yourself? What if you became addicted to the self-development programs or ideas or people or whatever it would take to help you understand the way life really works? What if you became so passionate that you were going to wake up to what's really true about yourself? Oh my gosh, can you imagine what your life would be like? Can you imagine how powerful you would be in your life? And instead of just barely getting by, you would be exalted, you would be empowered, you would be alive, and you would help other people do that too. I mean, gosh, there's so much to living, and there's so many people that don't know that that's there.
Wow. I have so many things I want to say, and we're running out of time for this segment. But what I did want to say is that reminds me when we did the retreat, we did a Love of Self retreat, and we did a whole series of exercises and awareness things that had just helped me crack through some of these things. So we should talk more about that, because I think that's really something that would be awesome. So
you mean talk about that at another time?
Time? Yeah, we just don't.
Baby,
have time
I'm on
now.
fire today. I could keep on talking, but I'm thinking we have to slow down.
This topic just like took us. It's a big one for me, and it's just. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. There's the one thing we forgot to tell you is everyone write this down and then go out and get a T-shirt that says,
"What you think of me is none of my business. What you think of me is none of my business." Let me tell you, when you get to a place of loving self, when you start to realize that you're amazing the way you are, then you're going to allow people to think, feel, say, do whatever they would like about you, and you will be divested from what it is that's going on. Because remember what we've spoken about in other podcasts, and that is that energy never leaves its source. So when someone is judging on you, they're really judging on themselves, and they're projecting that on you because it's too uncomfortable for them to look at. And that works the same for you. When you're judging other people, it's because of your own self. And if you lived with the premise, what you think of me is none of my business, then what occurs is that you are allowing yourself to be yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you would necessarily want to go out and, rape and pillar or steal and whatever.
Rape and pillar?
Isn't that true?
Where'd you get that from?
I don't know. It just came from somewhere. But, just like things that people think are really not so cool. And if you wanted to do that, you'd do it and you'd be cool with it. And what you would realize is if there's things that you were doing, like lying or whatever, you can choose not to do that. Not because it makes you a bad person, but because, not interesting anymore. You know how to do that? Go do something new. And it's also because ultimately, on some very deep level, we feel better about ourselves when we're doing things that make us feel good, raise our vibration, if you will, or improve our attitude. Most people that are doing these things that we're speaking about are not feeling good about themselves. And that means that when you lie, you don't feel good. It feels uncomfortable, especially when you become more aware. So it's not like the lying is a such a thing. It's that you don't feel good when you do that, which lowers your vibration, which means that you'll start attracting people being unkind to you. And if they're not unkind to you, you'll be unkind to yourself, because you will start to beat yourself up, because that's what happens in low vibrations. And so it's important for you to recognize you have choice. You may not know how to implement that choice, but there is definitely a choice. And that's why we do what we do, is to help people know how to really implement choice that comes from an aware place that allows you to create a new you, a new life, a new way of being, thinking, feeling, and experiencing every single moment.
Cool. Who is the person who that quote came from?
Originally, I heard it from Terry Cole Whitaker.
I just wanted
way
to give
back,
credit.
Yeah, way back whenever, but I have since heard it from many people. I'm not sure who the originator of it was, but I so love it.
And for me, what I just wanted to say is that if you were to wear that shirt and walk around with it and basically go public with that, make a declaration to yourself, to your friends, family, and the universe that's how you really want to be and are, what a difference that will make.
And I invite you to do some preliminary work before you do that, because people may come up to you and say, well, what does that mean? And you can go do it anyway, because all of life is an adventure of learning, and that's just where it can be. But it is a very powerful thing. If somebody says something to you and you can say internally, at least, what you think of me is none of my business, and allow yourself to really move through the feelings that are there inside of you. You can literally go and write down all the things that came up for you, and just allow those feelings to pour out on paper. And then next to those feelings, or any feelings of denigration, you can create another list across from that is the opposite of that. I feel really bad. I feel really guilty. And then next to it, you write, I feel really good. I'm very excited about who I am. When you give your mind something else to think about, it will think that. We are thinking what we have been told to think, not what is necessarily true at all. This is an exercise that you can do for yourself. And part of that can look like writing in a gratitude journal, and have that writing only be about you. What were 3 amazing things that you did, felt, experienced, said, whatever, in that day? Just about you. I mean, a lot of times people write gratitude journals. I'm so grateful that I saw such a beautiful sunset. I'm so grateful that whatever happened. But what if you just wrote down 3 or more things that said, I am so grateful that I was very aware when I was talking to so-and-so. I am so grateful that my body is so strong today that I was able to work out longer than I ever thought. I am so grateful because my heart was so open when I was talking to Sandy today, whatever. And bring it back to yourself and all the amazing things that you do, because what you think of me is based on you, not really them. So when you can look at yourself and say, if you knew who I am, you would really love me. You would really love me, because underneath all of these belief systems is the true you. And that is the real essence of life. The real essence of life.
Cool. That's great. So we're going to be right back in 1 minute, and we're going to go to the Ask E section of the program. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, we are back. We have one question today that comes from Sandy, and it says, it feels like my partner is constantly criticizing me. I don't know how to deal with it. I can't get him to stop. Help.
Well, hopefully Sandy will listen to this podcast because there's a lot of really things that are applicable to that. When someone is criticizing you on a continuous basis, the first thing you will always recognize is that two things. One is that person is in their own level of pain and they are trying to protect their own world. I've talked about that before. The second thing is that your own self-esteem is so low, for lack of a better term, that you're creating somebody coming up and reminding you of what it is that you actually feel about yourself. When you have judgment about yourself, about the way you do anything or the way you think or any of that, the universe will always bring you people to reaffirm what it is that you've been thinking the most about. So if you're being seemingly judged or somebody is bringing something up repeatedly, yes, they have their own stuff going on, but the big thing for you to look at is, what is it that's going on inside of me that's creating me getting this feedback from people? Am I walking around feeling guilty because of this? Do I have shame because of this? Am I feeling like I'm not enough because of this? Am I feeling weak and impotent about this? Whatever it is going to actually have originated from within yourself. Because when we say energy never leaves its source, what we think and what we feel goes out to the universe, and then we invite people to bring to us what it is that we are actually thinking and feeling about ourselves. That's why to get angry at another person for a certain way of being is really kind of silly, because they're just being the mirror to you. And that is something that when you have support to do so, you can look deeply into that and then heal that from within yourself. And the first thing, of course, as you heard us say so many times, is have the awareness of that. And there is and many times people that are in this kind of situation, it's very good to do something called Ho'onoponopono. And don't even ask me to spell it. We'll get the spelling for you. And
we can barely
put it
pronounce
on
it.
I know. Put it on in the verbiage here on this episode. It's a very, very powerful, it's an old Hawaiian technique that allows us to work on forgiveness, self-forgiveness, because all forgiveness is really about self. And I know that I think it is spelled Ho'oponopono. And if you put that in Google and search for it, it'll be close enough to get it. Ho'oponopono.
As you were standing there saying that, I pictured you in a spelling bee.
Would you please use that in a sentence? I used Ho'oponopono to heal myself. So the bottom line is it's very powerful. And there's a book by Joe Vitale called Limitless or Zero Limits. It's called Zero Limits. Joe Vitale, which tells the story of this whole thing. It's a very powerful technique. I love it and I recommend it to people. So that's something that you can also work with. And if that's something that is supportive, that will be awesome. If it goes deeper than that for you, Sandy, then contact me, because maybe there's something that we could do together that would be really helpful for you. Sometimes we are creating abuse and we don't even know that we are. That's another whole subject.
And the technique that Isatis was just speaking about, it's 4 sentences that are constantly repeated, and it's meant to be directed at yourself. So it's, I'm sorry for the hurt that I caused you, or I'm sorry.
It's just, I'm sorry.
Please forgive me. I love you. You're welcome.
No.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So say them again.
Okay, so again, it's...
It starts with,
I'm sorry.
and then you say,
Please forgive me.
and then you say,
I love you.
And then you say, thank you.
Thank you. The thank you is the gratitude for showing you what you need to see. It's very powerful. If you read Joe's book, it's miraculous. Actually,
There's a
the
ton
way
of
it
stuff
works.
on the internet
Yes.
about it. So it's I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And when you repeat that over and over and over again, it's not really about the other person. It's really about you. But go learn about that, and that'd be a great thing for you to do, Sandy, and for all the rest of you that are listening.
That's another thing we should do is a show on forgiveness, self-forgiveness. We have a lot of
But we
things
never
to talk
shit on
about.
ourselves.
That's
So
right.
good.
Well, okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Please send us your questions. Please give us your comments. Engage here below this. And we really would love to hear from you and communicate with you.
And I'm going to leave you with the question of the day. Remember, this is a rhetorical question. You're not going to do anything with it except repeat it several times a day. And that is, what would it take for me to love myself exactly as I am? What would it take for me to love myself exactly as I am? That may seem like a really big assignment, but let me tell you, it is possible. Anything and everything is possible. This section of each episode is about the world of possibilities. This world of possibilities allows your mind to go out and bring back the answers to the impossible things that some part of you may think. What would it take for me to love myself exactly as I am?
And if you haven't listened to the prior episode, number 7, about how to access your own personal Google search, I really recommend that because we speak about the power of these rhetorical questions and how they will bring you exactly what you're looking for.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, again, we are so happy to be here with you. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Stay on fire.